invited, 3-4 years ago. Had a great time. Thank you, Lev, and the team for inviting me again this year and to be part of ULCAMP. I feel like on vacation, so it's great. I'm sorry you have to hear and listen to this discussion, but it's part of the game. And having this discussion with the team here, there's this vision or dream that is clear that you guys have a huge potential in developing IT and making Ульяновск a great hub, IT hub in the world. So what I wanted to do in this panel discussion is trying to get from Lev and Ruslan's experience, since they are both from Ульяновск, trying to find some ideas and sharing their experience, their challenges, what they have done to do what they are doing today. So I'll ask them different questions. I believe that there is a discussion about product, there's a discussion about technology, there's a discussion about business, and that's what we are going to cover. So Sridhar will be covering a little bit more of the product aspect. We are actually merging his presentation, which was scheduled to be, I believe, at 12 today. So we're going to make this session a 90-minute session. And I don't know, who was the person supposed to present at 11? Are you here? We're gonna move by half an hour, so it's gonna be starting at 11:30. What else we have here? Hold on one second, stay hiding. Want to say a few bad things about them. It's right now before they're here. Do you guys have any questions or specific interest you would like to hear from any of the three guys hiding right now? Do you have any key questions? You can ask them in Russian, and I'm sure some people can help translate for me, or you can ask them in English or in French. Nobody? You have no questions? All right. Sure. Just gonna. All right. So, come in here. So I'm gonna share one mic. Huh? Okay.
Let's have it ULCAMP style. Yeah. Hands together, dance.
Sit in the middle.
Right.
Is this better? Okay, so who had more than 3 hours of sleep? That's the first question. You slept more than 3 hours? They don't, you told me they understand English.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. So, here's the deal. What I would like is in this 90 minutes, I would like you guys to share some ideas of what it takes for any of the people here to think and continue the transformation of Ульяновск as an international IT hub. And we're going to go through, again, some business discussions, some technology discussions, some more product discussions. And I think you want, what you could do is give us one insight, one idea of what it takes to think product. And maybe some people here already function that way, but it might be something that you bring from some other companies and some other places in the world where you have experienced some of those methodologies. So maybe you can give a brief background of what was your experience, where you're coming from, why you think it's interesting for them actually, instead of sleeping, to actually be here and listen to us, right?
They're already awake, so
You're awake, but I've seen some heads already like, took, and then the eyes, took. You good?
I think so, yeah.
You take what, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 15?
I'll take as long as they don't fall asleep. So maybe.
Yeah, but you're the first. Make sure you leave a little bit of time for the other guys.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want me to go first? So my name is Sridhar. I met some of you guys last night. It was great. You definitely know how to party, so I'm happy to be here. And you guys have a beautiful spot. It looks like I might have to come here every year. So this is awesome. So I've been with Ecwid for about 7 months now, and prior to that, I did a bunch of other stuff, including working at PayPal and worked all over the world. So what I thought I'd talk about today was, what are the key elements of successfully globalizing a product or a business? And I want to just keep talking, so I would, as Philippe mentioned, I think the smarter thing to do would be, I'll talk about maybe 1 or 2 points first, and then we can have a discussion about it. And if you have any questions, just feel free to put your hand up and ask. So it's completely informal. And if I'm talking too fast, just let me know. I'll slow down. Is everyone okay with the way I'm speaking right now, or is that? All right. Okay. Cool. All right. So I want to talk about 3 questions, and about why globalization is important. And the first one is, what is globalization, and what makes it important for a business, and especially a business in an emerging market. The second thing is, what are the key elements of a good globalization strategy? So, what takes a company from good to great when you're going across borders? And then the third thing is more about what startups need to keep in mind, because the dynamics and the scale for startups is very, very different. So those are the 3 questions I have. So what I suggest we do is we'll go through the first question first. I'll talk about it briefly, and then we can have a discussion about it. So the first one is, what is globalization, and why is it important? The funny thing is, globalization's been happening for centuries. And in fact, it's just become, we've coined a fancy term for it in the last 20 years or so, but it's been happening for hundreds of years. Good examples of it, the Silk Road, I'm sure you guys are aware of it, way back 500 years ago, when silk was moved all the way across from Asia all the way through Europe. And then the spice routes all the way from, when the Dutch moved their spices by ship all the way across from Asia back to Europe and other places. So that has been happening. But what has uniquely changed in the last 20 or 30 years is a couple of things. One is all of this happens far more rapidly. And a lot of that is due to what I call democratization of information and technology. So information was not as easily available or distributable before the internet. And what that did was it allowed the businesses and people to interact much more differently and much more rapidly over the last 20 years or so. So what does that really mean? I mean, what that really means is once you democratize information and technology, your access to your consumers goes up exponentially and much faster. So I'll give you an example. So we have 2.2 billion users of the internet approximately today. And funnily enough, the vast majority of them now are in fact not in developed markets. In fact, the largest one right now, as of a couple of months ago, is China, which has more internet users now than the US, which is pretty amazing. So, and what is interesting about it is each one of these users in places like China and Russia for that matter are far more nascent in their needs. What do I mean by that? I mean, their needs haven't as yet evolved to the point where developed markets are. And what that basically means is the value that a company can derive on a per user basis is much, much higher in these emerging markets. So it's important to keep that in mind because for the same dollar that you spend or ruble that you spend on acquiring a customer in an emerging market, the return on that dollar is going to be much, much higher. So, that's actually a pretty important part of globalization and to keep in mind. The other thing also, and I'll give you some statistics, in fact, even from Ecwid. So Ecwid is, funnily enough, one of the most global companies that I've worked with and worked at. Extremely, both technologically as well as philosophically, geared towards making sure that customers all over the world have an optimized experience. I'm not saying that we're 100% there, but the philosophy exists. And here's an interesting statistic. Only 10% of Ecwid's users are here in Russia. And I'll tell you something even more interesting. Only 40% of our users are in the US. So 50% of our users are actually in markets that, in fact, we don't even have an active presence in. Okay, so at least we have a couple of people in the US and a few people here in Russia, but 50% of our users, you know, their only access is through a website. So it's really, really critical for us to be able to understand what these users are doing and make sure that we deliver to their needs. I'll give you another example, and this was back when I was at PayPal. So PayPal, its international revenues, so revenues outside the US at PayPal exceeded that of the US way back in 2008. And in fact, the profitability per user exceeded, the profitability coming from outside the US exceeded the US in 2006. So this is 7 years ago. Already, PayPal was more profitable outside the US than it was in the US. And I'll tell you something even more interesting. Even today, the amount of effort that PayPal puts in to their domestic US users versus the international users is incredibly different. So here you have it where it's a very big, evolved company, a multi-billion-dollar organization that still hadn't 100% figured out how to really take care of their non-US users. I'm not saying that, and I don't want you to sort of take away that, hey, look, it didn't happen at all. It just wasn't as perfect as it could have been. So some food for thought there. So reasons on, you know, what is globalization and why it's important, and what, you know, and why it's in good concrete examples of how companies have in fact Ecwid, a local company, has shown the need to take care of its customers outside its home region. So I'll kind of pause there and hand off to Philippe.
Okay, thanks. I have some questions for you. If I understand what you explained, we have two different aspects. There's a marketing aspect and there's a product aspect. Maybe to simplify, marketing would be to reach out to customers which are not your primary geographical local consumers. So there's a market access, which is to reach out, go to some maybe different cultural groups or maybe different countries, etc. and then there's the product, and maybe linked to product somewhere there's technology. So how can anyone from the audience right now who has, on Mondays going back, and some of you, I know you're on vacation, but on Monday, some of you will go back and work on your tasks. Most of you are, I believe, I understand, in the IT, in technology. You are developing code, sometimes very low-level code, sometimes more user-facing code. What is one point that they can bring today and Monday starting to think about it? Something very actionable, maybe from the technology, if most of the audience is from the technology. What can they do? What can they think about that Monday they start having their product or maybe their marketing to be more global, as you define it?
Actually, I have a whole section on that. Do you want me to continue talking again for 20, 15 minutes? Or do you
get a 5-minute kind of pitch. Be like anything, one thing, they can go out of the meeting, whatever, it's a conference, it's a talk, the thing here, the camp, the ULCAMP.
Okay. So there are actually 4 things. And I have it on my notes here. So that was a very easy question. So he sort of set it up for me. So thank you, Philippe.
He sent me his notes before, so.
Yeah, so this is actually a fairly easy question. I just feel bad for Lev and Ruslan sitting there. I thought they'd get a chance to talk.
They will talk. I'm sure, I know that.
Okay. So there are 4 things. There's 4 things to keep in mind, and specifically from a web perspective as we design globally. And we need to design for the following. One is what we call global reach. Global reach is the ability to deliver an experience in as many languages as possible, but also do so in a context-sensitive manner. Right? That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, again, since we're talking about real detail, navigation. So, funnily enough, people think that it's a very easy thing to design. I actually spent, and this is a really funny example, I spent about 9 months of my life at PayPal trying to redesign the information architecture. And believe you me, we made very little progress. I mean, 9 months. And this is a research all over, 7 countries to understand how customers interact with PayPal. And it was extremely difficult to move that forward. And the reason was simple. The reason was the solution was very, very obvious, and it was in fact very interesting. The solution was that every single customer, pretty much the 90% of the interaction with PayPal was exactly the same. The way they perceived the service and the way and what they expected from that service. It was very, very consistent. What was also consistent was the fact that when the navigation was designed, everyone sort of completely got it, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, there's a buying aspect, there's a selling aspect, and there's the I don't know aspect. Great. It's fairly simple information architecture, and you can design a navigation. But the thing that really didn't help us move forward was the people. And it was internal. And what happened was, this was a case where data was trumped by just internal decision makers. And of course, that kind of issue is never going to happen in a smaller company. But the point I was trying to make here is that navigation is a very, very critical element, and especially global navigation. And there are a lot of companies that do this really well. And one such example, actually, and I mean everyone here uses Facebook. I'm not saying their navigation is excellent. It's not. That's debatable. But what they've done is they've really engaged their users. Their approach to it is very different. They believe that you don't navigate, you just sort of discover. But one company that does it really well is Google, and they only use data. It's incredible why their homepage still only has one box. And it's because no matter what, they've actually done the math behind the design of that homepage to figure out that if they add anything other than that box to that homepage, they're actually going to see a significant decline in revenue. And that's the way they have decided to go forward with it. But not everyone has such a simple product, unfortunately. You know, there are most of the products that we talk about, like e-commerce products, whether it's Ecwid or Xcart, we want to get a lot of information across to customers. When we want to get that kind of information across to customers, the information architecture becomes really, really important. And the thing to keep in mind here is, how do we do that? First, create some level of consistency, but do so that it doesn't matter whether it's a customer from the US or a customer from Russia or a customer from some other part of the world comes to that homepage, they understand the value proposition and know exactly where to navigate. There are many ways to do this. I mean, and I'm sure you guys are all technologists and you've figured it out. There are things you can do with geolocation that a lot of companies have already put into place. Not that it's 100% accurate, but it's a good starting point. There are good overlays that you can put on the homepage to make sure that customers have an understanding of where they're coming from and what the experience that they want, that they're moving towards. And also, the other thing to keep in mind is the linguistic aspect. And this is the hardest thing to do. And this is something even at Ecwid that we're working through, is just because you translate content, that doesn't necessarily mean it's localized. Because the context needs to be translated as well. And just going to Google Translate and finding the equivalent word and putting that on the navigation is not going to do it. So that's actually the hardest part. And that's where the decision becomes a little harder, because we need to think about whether or not we should stick to English and say, hey, look, because we don't understand the context of all the languages. Or we can say, hey, no, we're going to pick 5 languages and only make sure it's perfect in those 5. And if I'm not perfect in those 5, in the other languages, be honest with the customer and say, hey, look, we're good in these 5. We'll give you a great experience, but for the other 170 languages, we're going to give you English because that's what we believe is the best experience. And it's important to do that because you cannot have this, what we call in the US a half-assed experience, where a customer comes to a site and they go, well, I see the homepage is perfect, it's in Russian, and as soon as I click on a navigation element, I go to a page in English, and the guy goes, wait, what did you just do? You just screwed me up. You set an expectation that I was going to have a pretty consistent experience. I go further down the site, and it doesn't look that good. So, I mean, there's a concrete example of something we can do.
Would you say the ULCAMP website is global?
The audience isn't global, right? I mean, so I think it's well set up for the local one.
Well, I'd say that ULCAMP website, is it up, by the way? Because I heard it was down 1 hour. So
It's globally down.
yeah, it was globally down, so pretty global. And I think it does, address the needs, because you're here, Sridhar's here, so I guess all of the guests outside of Russia, they got the information they needed. So the total structure and the process and the website is just part of it. I think, yeah, it's pretty global. It does the thing. But I just wanted to add one point to Sridhar, that sometimes you really don't have to really localize the product to make it global. And some customers are pretty much ready to use the product which is in global language, which is English today, as of today. No way. I understand the ambition, but we're not there yet. And hopefully we'll never get there, Philippe, because French is so hard for me to learn. I tried real hard. But the thing is, sometimes it's just about reassuring the customer is that, you know, we are fine with the fact that you come from Indonesia. We're fine with the fact that you're coming from Russia. So that's especially important example for e-commerce, for example, because when some e-commerce customers arrive on the website and the website sells something, it's fairly okay if the site is English only. But then if it just shows a small banner saying, hey, we do ship to Russia, or hey, you can pay with the Yandex money, or you know, even not showing the local things like Yandex money, but just saying we're fine. Hey, you're from Russia, welcome. Spasibo. And that's really increases the conversion.
Let me talk a bit. I wanted to add a few technical aspects to that. You know, speaking about China as the largest market by far, there are several things interesting and peculiar about China. For example, do you know that the default mode of opening pages in China is in the new window? Who knew? Wow, nobody knows. Okay, and this highlights a very important point. As technologists, we know that ideally we would measure, we would do some decisions based on data. There are a couple of problems with that. First of all, the data might not be available for the company which is not global yet, which is operating on a scale which does not allow building robust models and testing them and measuring the effect of like 1.5% of something on something. So trying to make a product better based on data might not work on some scale, but when you grow, then it becomes a very important tool. But the more important thing is to know where to look, because you can tweak the data all you want, you can tweak the design all you want, but if you don't know where to look to enhance the experience, when you don't know that the local people prefer some technical tricks that are completely no-no or outside of your comfortable range for your Russian market, you won't be able to do that. So information and educating yourself about all the various quirks of the local other markets is very, very important, and this while growing at the very early ages, this might be even more important than trying to translate something on or do the different size boxes or add information, remove information. Research is everything. Research your different markets, and first of all, there is always a cultural research mode that has to go on for the companies who want to do the product, and your product won't be the same for all the countries because of that, because of all the strange reasons.
Few questions here. So, Srida, you mentioned user research at one point. PayPal, you mentioned about 7 different countries. What are the tools? So Lev talks about research being important, says go ahead and learn. How do you go about learning? If you go Monday back to the office, how do you know that China as a pop-up, and is it even important in the context of the product that you're working? So how do you know where to look? How do you know, how do you get to know what you don't know, right? So tools or resources?
I mean, research comes in 2 ways, right? There's primary research and secondary research. The smaller the company, the harder it is to afford primary research. So it's expensive. I mean, doing user research is by no means something that a small company can do. But there's a lot of secondary research out there. I mean, there are, for example, a lot of great reports on region-specific needs, whether it's things like globalization, whether it's language needs, and by industry. So, for example, hey, what do e-commerce customers in specific countries? What do internet customers in specific countries, what are their nuances, what's common, and so on. So that's pretty easily available. You can find it, go online and download a report. And if you need any tips, just ping me. I'll send you tons of reports, or at least links to tons of reports. However, though, that only tells you it gives you sort of a second-hand perspective on the customer. For first-hand, you do need to do user research. And going back to what Lev said, I think user research is harder to do, but testing and learning is easier to do in smaller companies. That means you put something out there, you do an A/B test, and you see which works better. And you'll very, very quick to understand what things work well and what doesn't work well. Now, going back to the type of research that we were doing at PayPal, that was very different. So it was two things that we did, and just as a point of reference. One was there was a lot of eye tracking research, which I think right now you can even get. You don't even have to do it. There are others, third parties, that can do eye tracking research for you, because that gives you a first-hand perspective of how customers really interact with your product. And so it correlates your tracking of your eyes to what you actually click on, because you don't always click on what you think they're going to click on, or your eyes may be going somewhere else and you may click something else. That's one thing. The second thing is qualitative research that helps understand what's called the user mental model. So this is understanding how users think about a specific question. So you pose abstract questions to customers, and they will actually come back and they'll start answering them, and you bucketize all of these answers, and you can create a mental model of what the customer is actually, how they're going to be interacting with a specific site, or your specific site, or how you want them to interact. So those are a few examples.
Thanks. So I think this was let's call that the first part of the discussion, which was focusing a little bit more about on product, the product aspect. I think what's important here, this was just an example, right? We took that, Sridhar, you took that example of globalization is an important aspect when you think product. There are many different aspects when you think about product, and they are essential components of thinking when you think about IT. You cannot think about technology without product. You cannot think about product without technology, and you cannot talk about product without business or technology without business. Let's talk a little bit more about technology. Lev, I'm going to start with you. So you were born in Ульяновск.
Yes.
I did my research. You grew up in Ульяновск.
Yeah.
And you went to the university in Ульяновск. And your focus was technology. Yes, no, I understand.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand.
I do technology,
Yeah, you do technology. How old were you when you started to think technology?
10 years.
10 years old.
Yeah.
So you're a baby, you're thinking technology, you are in Ульяновск, you go to the university, you learn technology, you're happy?
No, first of all, I wasn't a baby when I went to university.
How old were you?
Like maybe 14.
14, okay. So you have a great, let's say, international or experience. You went outside of Ульяновск and you continue to do technology. You happen to be in Silicon Valley. Can you share some aspects of technology? What's the difference between Ульяновск technology as you learned it, as you started to practice, and what is it in terms of technology that you experienced maybe in Silicon Valley, maybe working for some companies over there, large companies or smaller companies, and what suggestions do you give to maybe people in the university today or working in companies in Ульяновск to go beyond maybe the technology they are exposed to, or learn more, or do better technology, and what opportunity do you see?
Okay, I wanted to answer to the question formulated a little differently.
Stick to the question.
Stick to the question. No. You know, I did software. I did a little bit of hardware, but primarily I was doing software when I was in school and university. And it was a fun thing to do. This was a very interesting and educational experience. It was great. It was fun. And I thought that it is my purpose of in life to do a thing that works. And I went to university, and at some point I arrived in Silicon Valley, and immediately I recognized why I'm doing that. It's not because it's fun to do technology itself. It is because it actually has a purpose, and the purpose is beyond myself. The purpose is not to make me happy. The purpose is when I do something and it immediately gets used by millions and millions of users, it's a different experience, and you feel much, much closer to markets, closer to your global users and United States users when you're there. But that feeling can be obtained even here, so you don't have to go anywhere to have that. You can do it from here, but I had to go there to experience that myself. Unfortunately, there's some kind of transformational experience that goes when you visit the IT hubs like Silicon Valley that actually bridges the gap between technology that you're doing every day and the people who are using your technology. And at that point, I started to feel that, you know, the gap is so small that you can do something very, very useful and affect millions of people at once. You just have to make sure that this is something that people want. And this became a problem, actually. Why and what can I build for people to want? And this might be an easy question to Ruslan to have. And you know, Ruslan is a forefather of various shopping carts and e-commerce solutions here in Ульяновск in Russia and globally. He's been doing it for more than 10 years, and he's very successful in it. But when you're starting, you might not actually know what to do. And this actually becomes a problem. You know that you can reach the users, you know that you can code, you know that you can create product, but how do you actually figure out what to do? That's important. I don't have an answer.
Okay, great. Thanks for the answer, which is not an answer. Ruslan, do you have technology operations outside Ульяновск, development teams? Can you share from your observation, if there are differences when we talk about technology and technologies to developers and the engineering teams, different parts of the world, do people think in a different way? Is it because they have a different background or different training? Or is it because there are specific aspects like Lev mentioned in Silicon Valley, where business, product and technology are much closer? Can you share some of your observations?
Yes, Philippe. So I'd say that geography doesn't matter here. It's the people that matter. I genuinely believe, you know, there is a mentality in Russia that you need to go somewhere to pursue a dream. It's like, for example, if you arrive in Hollywood, you're going to be a Hollywood star there. I'd say no fucking way. So there are plenty of people there. And I'll switch to Russian for a moment. Улитка, карабкаясь на вершину Фуди, не спеши. На вершине Фуди, как говорил Пелевин, по-моему, улиток хватает и без тебя. So the thing is, I believe that the results, your achievement, depends first on who you do things with, not where you do. So the first thing is who you do things with, then second is what you do, and only the third is where you do. And talking about our teams, so we have the biggest technology team in Ульяновск, and I think the way it works, was mainly influenced, just by the selection of people. That's increasingly Eugene Kaznachev and Vasily Vasilkov, who are managing the technical team. And the way the team works is basically kind of driven by these people. But we have a team in Kazan here, so hi Leonid. And I'm happy that they came all the way to Ульяновsk from here. And they think completely differently. It's not because Kazan is a much different city. It's just because of they have a different leader, Leonid. He's, I'd say, more conservative. And this is the way they work. Now, we have US team, and Sridhar does some of the things that I'd call product engineering. So he doesn't code the things, but he defines a lot of stuff about the Ecwid product. And Sridhar is really scientifical in his approach. So unless a thing is measured, it doesn't exist for him. And you could observe that by the number of times he referred to data in his speech. So if we count that, that would also be an argument for him. So, that part is really research-driven, data-driven. It's not my intuition type of things. And I, personally, I have no structure. I just build things and then think. Overall, it's 40 people in Ecwid. I'm referring to Ecwid right now. Xcard has another 100 people. And geographically, most of our folks are in Ульяновsk. Then we have 3 people in San Diego, California, and 2 people so far from Kazan, and they're looking to expand. So if you are from Kazan and you're not with Ecwid yet, let me know. We're looking for more people there. Oh yeah, that's time zones in the mess. So working with it's one thing easy is that we all have the same time of the day. Kazan time is essentially as here, and California is also it's 11 o'clock right now in California. That's the easy part. The trouble is that it's it's getting close to midnight, but it's it depends on summer and winter time, the daylight time adjustment. Yeah. So this actually ended up in all of our team working real late to talk to the California guys who kind of like to work real up in the morning, and this is where we intersect. And I think this was also the experience for Lev, because I noticed that you generally message me at times like 3 a.m. in California, and that's pretty normal for you. So I guess it really messes up the sleep cycle, but somehow I think we're doing fairly well.
Yeah.
Нет, ты ничего не говоришь. Ты открываешь дверь, выходишь, там пацаны пьют пиво, ты ну нахуй. Вот. И дальше продукт фигачить. Well, the question was on basically doing global things in local communities instead of drinking beer, but you can combine, if you look at this event, so the two go fairly well together. That's not the first time I did that.
We also have the same problems of time zone between the team in Ульяновsk. We also have the team in Novosibirsk, which adds 3 hours from Ульяновsk. We have 7, 8, 10 people maybe in US, and in US we also have people on the East Coast and people on the West Coast, and we have so we have 3 hours difference within the US. We have 12, 11 hours difference with Ульяновsk. And we have 3 more hours with Novosibirsk. So there's a lot of email is the most used channel of communication. We do a lot of Skype chatting because we see when someone is up. Sometimes it's late at night or in the morning, and we take the opportunity to exchange a few messages. It is very strange to work for a few years with people that you have never seen. You may have seen them on the video, you have seen them on Skype video or on a GoToMeeting, but you have never seen the people, you have not shaken the hands. And that to me was a pretty new experience, at least for a long period of time. It's very different from doing offshore, where you actually send a spec and what you expect in return is a piece of product or a piece of technology. Here, we are part of the same company, and there is way more than the technology, there's way more than the product. There's a team, there are people that we work with, we share the same vision, we share the same interest, and we need to have that, sharing the same interest means that there is discussion about that interest. There is inspiration, there's motivation, there's belief. We follow the financial state of the company, we follow the new customers, losing a customers, and so on. And that is very difficult to achieve when it is part of the same company, but so separated physically. It's a very different way of working. We've developed a few tools. We've a chat, a forum. We use Google Community, and we call that the break room, and it's the place where it's the equivalent of the coffee machine. So we post photos. I've been posting photos from ULCAMP, and that's our way to stay in touch as people. There's also a little bit of business we talk about, but it's mostly the people, what we do and how we live, and it helps a lot understanding and putting a context to the decision we make on the technology. I had another question. Any other questions on technology? Difference between technology, if you do technology in Ульяновск, and maybe technology, how you handle technology in the rest of the world. Did you notice differences between the education itself, the university training in Ульяновск, and say, take an example like Stanford or Berkeley?
Yeah, certainly there is a tremendous difference between education and the first and foremost difference is students. The university is made by the students. You can tell pretty much everything to the student who attends the Stanford University, and there are much fewer people who are able to do that, to comprehend the curriculum here in Ульяновск. This is a fact. You cannot go away from it. However, the interesting thing is that education itself is not a limiting factor here. And in Ульяновск, there is a plenty of very, very talented people who can do it on the world scale, who can do things, who can compete in international competitions, IT-based competitions. And so we have a pool of talent here that can compete globally, but not at the scale of Stanford, not at the scale of Berkeley and stuff. This is given and not that important. What's important is that the local ecosystem right now is rather limiting the abilities and limiting the outcomes for the people who are present here. And what we are trying to do collectively is to show how you can apply your knowledge, how you can get out your technical abilities and show it to the world at a larger scale. Show that you can, for example, do the machine learning and apply machine learning on a larger scale rather than do it in university and forget it after. We have some interesting programs in our universities. There might not be obvious how to use them in Ульяновск so people would leave, but right now there is a small but underutilized pool of talent in Ульяновск universities.
Lev, I'd argue that it's not the ecosystem that is limiting anything, because actually I do believe that Ульяновский ecosystem facilitates success of the IT guys here in Ульяновsk, and it facilitates the diversity of the problems they work on it. But the problem is that it's not mature enough to enable larger things to happen. But we'll get there. So it's not, ecosystem is not limiting something, it's just not facilitating enough at this point in time.
I concur. Right, the ecosystem is not limiting in the sense that when you look at it right now, you see the opportunities. However, what I'm trying to tell by saying that it is limiting is that there is a very large opportunity to expand the options and to grow the ecosystem, and this is why it is limiting now, because I see how it can be expanded and made more efficient. That's my point.
What do you see that would be missing in terms of technology training? So if someone's been trained in Ульяновsk and is working in the IT, now maybe thinking, well, what is it that the Stanford guy knows that I don't know?
This is not important. Actually, the most important problem here is schooling and education in schools rather than universities. The orientation of people, making sure that people who have abilities in IT see the opportunities for those abilities, especially see those opportunities in Ульяновsk. Many people switch from IT to something like economy and something because it might be more lucrative or appear more lucrative in the short term, but we need to be able to convert as much people who want to do technology to technologists and to make sure that those people have work and very, very interesting and diverse tasks here in Ульяновsk to apply their skills.
So you're saying Eco and Ecwid are the best opportunities for?
I am implying that, but I'm not saying that. There are many opportunities beside us.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of reinforce the message that Lev said, that it's not really the access to knowledge which limits anything. We have all the access we want thanks to the likes of Coursera, and you just really need to learn some English. You absolutely do need to do that if you want to be advanced in pretty much any area of expertise, not just IT, because it gives you easier access to the information. But what lacks is the leadership, because the educational leadership, because the few people that have an idea of what they want to study, they will make their way and they will actually study that and they will find a way to experience that. So this is not a problem. But let's say the kind of mid-layer, mid-tier, the people who don't really know what they want, they lack inspiration and then educational leadership. So the kind of people who tell you, so look at how interesting this world of IT is and how interesting this particular technology is. And this is a technology you should learn right now. It's not Turbo Pascal. You should really learn this and that, and try doing this with this technology, just experience that. So guiding the people through these discoveries is what could really be improved in the local education.
And last question before we close the discussion on technology, and that Russell was a good bridge to more business, and maybe we can take the leadership angle. The question is, from your standpoint, so you, if I understand correctly, you are more surfacing the requirements from the US and working with the development teams in Ульяновsk. From what you have experienced working with technologists and developers at PayPal or in Silicon Valley, and working with the technologists in Ульяновsk, do you see a difference? And if so, what that difference is?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, I'll just say that the biggest difference is I was amazed by the quality of technical knowledge from the team in Ульяновск. I mean, it's pretty amazing in terms of not just the tools and the understanding of those tools, but also in terms of the ability to really want to learn things that they may not have known before. So I think from that perspective, it's pretty amazing. And the other thing also is what I've seen, and I think I don't want to compare to PayPal because PayPal is now a large company, and when you have 5,000 engineers, you're just not going to have the same kind of quality as you do with 20 good engineers. But I would say that the interaction with the technical team here has been fantastic. I mean, everyone that I interact with speaks English, and and understands the product and understands the business problem we're trying to solve, and understands the context which leads to much better products. So I think overall it's great. I think this is the right way to do it.
So we often ask the question, I mean, I know in Silicon Valley we often ask the question, should we have a team that's 10 hours, 11 hours, different time zone, not being in the same office, and should we build a team in a technology, a development team in Silicon Valley? Is that also sometimes the questions that cross your mind, and how do you balance back and say, you know what, this is the right solution here, this is really what works, because yes, those technologists are exactly what we need, and we know how to work together and make it work. How do you deal with this question?
So I think that's probably not the right question. The right question is Silicon Valley has, it's just like a pyramid like anywhere else. There are crack developers in Silicon Valley who are in demand and are probably unaffordable to most people in the world. Okay, so if you want to get, like the head of architecture for Google, there's only 2 or 3 guys there, and they're really not realistic. So yes, at that level, I think Silicon Valley does have an edge, but that doesn't necessarily define the direction of a company, because ultimately, if you have a group of very good engineers who know A, the technology, and B, the business problem you're trying to solve, the rest of it actually is not that important. But there's a separate side of it, which is a second part, which is not technology related, but more about the network. That's a separate issue. So I think one advantage that people in Silicon Valley have is really to these crack developers or technology people that you may want to access at some point in time for guidance and so on. That's a different angle, but in terms of just sheer knowledge and technology, I think that's I don't think that's an issue.
All right, so then there's another idea here. You mentioned the head of architecture from Google, and I believe one of them is Max Levchin, and I believe is from Kiev, right? And
Levchin
from PayPal, who founded then Slide, and so. And he's not in Kiev. He's in Mountain View, and Lev Walkin. You know Lev Walkin?
Yeah, but Max was like 6 years old when he moved to Silicon Valley.
So why did you move to Silicon Valley, and why are you still in Silicon Valley? I believe, Ruslán, you're back in Ульяновск. You operate from Ульяновск.
That's actually an interesting idea. When I was leaving, I considered myself as having done everything that I could in Ульяновск technology-wise. There was always options available, but those options weren't at the level that I wanted. In those times, I wanted to do something much, much bigger, and there was no opportunity in Ульяновск at all. So I went there, and I decided to jump Moscow, skip Moscow, and go directly to Silicon Valley. And it was a good decision at the time. Right now, there are at least several global opportunities here in Ульяновск. And if I had those options back then, I think I wouldn't have left. You know, this is very important. Right now, we can stay here and do what we want. Maybe the options are narrower, but there are options and the option pool is growing.
Do you see an opportunity for you actually to come back to Ульяновск and operate based on your experience?
You know, logistically it is possible, but you know, I'm living for 12 years in United States. I just live there. It's like my wife and my kids are there. My dog is there, and yeah, you know, I like it there. So no, I won't move, but it is not a decision to make for everyone. I think that everyone has to decide. But at least I would have had a better chance of staying here if I was you.
Yeah, so I'll just yet again reinforce the message from Lev that, you know, basically it was never geographical for me. Living in Ульяновск was never a geographical choice. I always prioritized people, and I think this what makes life happy, the people around you, and this what helps you create. So basically, I initially stayed in Ульяновск because of the people issues, I'd say. So I had to find a way to build what I wanted from here, and I found that. But accidentally, because of that, I met a lot of very, very interesting people, amazing people, brilliant, bright people, beautiful people. And guys, Ecwid guys, X-Card guys, are you here? I love you all, and essentially, it's not geographical choice, it's choice of being here with you. And that's what makes me happy. And what also very cool is that now, with all the events that we built here, it's wider. It's not just kind of our team, but it's a bigger team, the Ульяновsk team, all of this ecosystem here. It's growing so rapidly, and it's such a pleasure to be part of this groove and contribute to this groove. How can you do anything else? I think this is the place where I create the most value, and I believe that it should be in a place where I create the most value. It's here for me.
So that's perfect. Kind of, yeah, we have about 10, 15 minutes left. So this was the second part. Kind of, you are in Ульяновск, you are in technology, what it means compared to the rest of the world. Looks like you're in very good shape. Ruslan, you mentioned you find a way. You stayed in Ульяновск and you found a way to make things happen the way you wanted them to make happen. You created your own opportunities. You observed. How do we connect that to maybe a business aspect, or what? No, you could just do technology and code and that's it, right? But you did more. There was something more, and you found a way to do it from Ульяновск. What is that aspect? Is it business, marketing? Is it communication? Is it a state of mind? Is it this thing you talk about, the people and connecting with people?
Well, I enjoy building systems. First, it was software systems, just as Lev mentioned earlier. So it's so cool to build a software product, then see it coming live and see people using it, and especially in the cloud industry when you have all of these databases populating with data, and you see how people interact with your product. It's so exciting. You build a world. And I was always inspired by that. When I was younger, when I was like maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, I used to build like games and imaginary worlds, and it's cool. Well, for me, it's really interesting to do so. But building the IT systems can help you see how these worlds populate with people and live very well. But then, as you said, when the IT part started to grow, I had to develop the expertise to build a non-IT system, but a system that is a company. So I had to build some marketing expertise, some management expertise, tax expertise sometimes. Because one of the problems with Ульяновский is that sometimes we just don't have the people who have the experience, who can be easily hired to match specific job description. So one of the advantages of the Valley is that you can be sure that if you have the buck, then you're gonna be able to hire any type of person. It just depends of how much resource do you have and how great is your team. But in Ulyanov, sometimes for some areas, there is just no way to hire people. You have to build it. You have to build the expertise. And I enjoyed learning this expertise, building it, and educating people, and learning myself. This is cool. This is life. I enjoy it.
So if there are people who are inspired by what you did and architecting technology components and systems, and then wanted to go beyond that and apply your architecture experience there, you mentioned different aspects from business, marketing, sales, whatever. I assume English. What did you learn English?
Just about anything I learned was practice. So I think one of the strong points I have is that I'm never shy to try and do something I think is right, even if I have no idea how to do that. It's gonna sort out somehow. So I learned. So English, I just started speaking it and got better with the practice.
So what are the resources to learn if we are at Ульяновск? Where is the best way to start to learn more about business, marketing, and from international experiences?
Well, I do think that first you have to learn English, basically. And that's, playing games, computer games in English. That's a good way to learn it. Watching movies. Porn movies if you're into German. So, and for the rest of the things, you just try, and you have to be real motivated. And I was real motivated because when people think of the job of the CEO, they think that he's a kind of boss that just sits there and kind of gives the orders, but this is not the way it works. If you're the CEO, you're basically the janitor, the guy who needs to, get all of the shit sorted out. Because as the company grows, there are people who specialize in some areas. There are some people who build the product. There are some people that do customer support. But if there is something unanswered by the structure, it goes up, and it escalates and it gets to the CEO. So we have no idea how to deal with this shit. So Ruslan, deal with it. So at first it's hard, but when you're not shy of just getting your hands dirty, eventually you get good at solving all of this strange shit that comes your way and structuring everything around you to answer these challenges. The only problem there, though, is making sure you don't get busy too much with that, and you find the time that, hey, I think we are big enough to create a dedicated unit for this type of thing.
So you mentioned something important. I think something very important is, which I would call maybe leadership, is the fact that you have faith. You believe that something can be done. You believe in yourself. You believe that there is an opportunity. You believe it can be done in Ульяновск, and you believe you can do it with other people. So you believe in other people as well. Is there any blockers today in people in Ульяновск not to have that faith, not to have that belief? What is it that is a clear message that say, yes, you too can do that. You are allowed to believe, and you are allowed to actually make things happen the way you want it. Here in Ульяновск, with some other people here and some people maybe in other places in the world.
Well, believing is fairly easy if you practice it. over time, I learned that there's one thing about, some of the people, unfortunately, and I'd like to help these people. So sometimes I see people that say that life treated me so badly. I'm so sad. I was so crushed by life. I was so crushed by betrayal of some people. I was so crushed by maybe a thing that happened to my personal health. I was so crushed by, the dumb Russian government and stuff like that. And people, they go around and say that, I had such a hard life. That's why I'm so sad, and I don't believe in anything. I'm a cynic. It's fashionable to be a cynic. But I believe that cynic is like rot of your soul. Your soul rots if you're a cynic. And another thing that I found out that I saw a lot of cheerful people, happy people, smiling people, people who behave as there is never anything bad can happen to them. Real bright people. But when I learned more about these people, I found out that these very people had bizarre experience. Really, they were extremely crushed by life in a matter that was nowhere as near, to the way the life treated the ones that are sad. So the thing is, if the life crashes you, there is it's not a reason to drop belief. You just have to keep believing, have to keep going. And as Mike Tyson said, that whenever I want to give up, I remember that if I will give up, it's not going to be any better for me, not going to be any easier for me. So practice believing, try, because if you didn't try, you'll never know where would it bring you.
I wanted to add one aspect to that. To answer specifically to Philip's question, how do you allow yourself to believe in your self-worth and in your ability to do something? I think one of the very proper and very straightforward aspect of ULCAMP is to make us all closer and to maybe show by example to, how many times in the year you have an opportunity to meet Ruslan like that. So you can go ahead and drink with him and ask questions and be inspired about what he's doing. This may serve as a good inspiration. I think that what we are trying to do collectively at Ульск.ИТ and at various other local hubs of leadership is to show by example, lead by example, and show that there is an opportunity to do and show that you are allowed to do.
Sridhar, last word you want to give?
Well, actually, it's I don't want to be all philosophical. I think there's enough philosophy here. I just want to say, hey, it's great to be here. I think you guys are on track to do some great stuff. This is the second time I've been in Ульяновsk. I must say summer is way better than winter. It's kind of, minus 20 and the frozen river didn't do it for me. But yeah, you guys have a great ecosystem of people, of talent, of everything. And I think the key, my only point is, it's not about aspiring to be someone else. It's the ability to do what you want to do, right? Aspiring to be someone else is maybe good when you're 5 years old, but as you get older and you start thinking, you got to sort of decide what you want to do and make sure that you have a path to get there. So, and I'm sure all of you guys are on that right path. So you just, and I think you have the opportunity here to really go the way you guys want to go. So good luck with that. It was fantastic being here, and I'm looking forward to having some beers with everyone tonight. So if you need to, or even now actually, so whenever you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to come and just tap me on the shoulder and we can have a beer. And thank you.
that word is thank you.
Yeah, I know. I have a quote from Gandhi, which just happens to be printed here, and just is exactly the summary of it. It says something like, happiness is when you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So thank you for the organizer for having us here. Thank you all of you for coming. Thanks for the ECHO team. It's a great pleasure to work with you. I hope we continue to grow this team. So if you want to join ECHO, talk to us. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the ULCAMP.